Hey, welcome in. Another Wednesday edition here. Um, just a heads up, we're going to be doing it again next Wednesday. Um, think that might be the last time, and then we'll go back to Mondays. Might be one more. Not quite sure yet. Definitely Wednesday next week. Um, getting close to getting back on a regular schedule here. Um, for those of you that don't know, I'm doing a little work for Legion baseball team in the area, and I've had Monday night games for all month long, pretty much since I got back home from Clemson earlier this month. I know I got one more. I think that's it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Definitely one more week of going on Wednesday. Um, I'll update you guys on that next Wednesday. But I appreciate everybody that's here. Different day, same thing. We can go wherever you want to go. I don't even really have a whole lot to, jump into right off the bat other than Eric Backett just killing it in the portal, man. Just absolutely killing it. Another big time addition today to the kid from Purdue, a freshman All-American. He's getting these kids, and not only is he killing it in the portal, he's getting these kids that have multiple years of eligibility left. Luke Gaffney, the one that popped today, he just wrapped up his freshman season. The big one they got last week just wrapped up his freshman season. So they are absolutely killing it. And I don't think they're done. If you kind of look at the makeup of the roster, I'm not sure there's much room left to add any other position guys. You just you got to think they're going to add an arm or two at some point. I know. I mean, make no mistake. I know the effort's being made. I know one guy they were targeting is already committed somewhere else. So yeah, I do know that they are making the effort to bring in an arm or two. But you gotta like what you've seen so far. I mean, and it's. I mean, talk about putting some pop back in that lineup. And it's easy to forget that this Clemson team hit over 100 home runs last season, something I didn't think they'd do. I mean, yet Jimmy Overtop and Blake Wright combined for more than 40 of those, and you got to replace that production. Both those guys are gone, and man, he has done a hell of a job. It is, especially with knowing some of the limitations with NIL and financial stuff, man. He is just done a remarkable job. And yeah, I do think they're targeting. They're definitely looking at pitchers. Absolutely, 100%. I can say that without hesitation. Can I tell you some new names? Can I tell you any specific names? No, but I do know that they have been looking at pitchers and want to add an arm or two. I know that for a fact. When you start talking about pitchers, especially high end guys, it gets a little bit murkier, man, when you start talking about money and stuff, because they're going to command, a lot of them are going to be looking for big deals. And I just don't know that Clemson's got that to offer at this point. It's similar to some ways to the football program where, Dabo's selling culture and that kind of stuff. But in Eric Backett's case, that's what he's got to sell. He doesn't have much of a choice. We've talked about, or Eric Backett has talked about many times how it would take about $1 million a year in NIL donations just to make it where the baseball players don't have to, where they could grant full scholarships to to the full roster, and no players have to pay out of pocket. And I don't know that they've come close to even hitting that number yet. I don't think they've sniffed it, to be quite honest. So it makes it a little bit tougher, and that's probably part of the reason why when you saw them adding arms last year, it was guys from Wofford, like Marshall and Malstead, and we'll see what they end up with this year. But yeah, they're making the effort. Make no mistake, they are making the effort to add an arm or two. I can say that with certainty. Whether Clemson goes after any of the A&M players, I have no idea. Again, I think that, and this is just from me looking at the roster, man. I don't know where you can add any more position players, unless you're just starting to talk about adding depth. I don't know where you already added 2 first basemen. Priest is a guy who's only ever pretty much played first base. You think he's going to slide over there. The kid today, he primarily played first base there at Purdue, did do some DHing. I mean, somebody's got a DH. Did do some DHing, and he's played some catcher in the past too, so maybe he dabbles in all 3 while you have his bat in the lineup every day. But then when you look at the other transfer, they brought in the Listy kid. He's a corner outfielder that could take Mathis's spots. You already get Canarella back. You get Pacetta back. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Will Taylor comes back. Even if he doesn't, you still got Pacetta, who started the last half of the season pretty much out there and left. It'll be interesting to see what the plan is at third. I'm assuming it's Nolan Araki. That's where he started out last season before he, sliced his hand up. And then you got Chufo back at shortstop, Purify back at second. I mean, it'll be hard to add somebody else when it comes to a position player. So that's just me looking at the roster and just not seeing where any more position players fit in. To me, this is just trying to be logical. To anybody else that's added, man, it's got to be an arm. But there have been a ton of A&M players hit the portal, man, and you can't really blame them. You kind of seeing something unprecedented here play out. And man, what this guy did, it doesn't get a whole lot. It doesn't get much lower, man. This deal for him to go to Texas has pretty much been done since before regional play started. So you got a coach that's got 1 foot out the door, coaching throughout the regional, the super regional, into the College World Series. They make it all the way to the championship game, split the first 2 games, and then on the day of game 3, all the marbles, Texas leaks it. I mean, I would hope against hope that those, and they probably are going to, man, but I will hate to see any of those guys go with him, man. If I'm a parent, there is no way in hell I'm letting my kid go play for that guy, ever. And then the way he handled himself in the press conference when he was asked about the Texas job, man, he dressed down the reporter that asked the question. As the head coach, he knows the question's got to be asked. Somebody's got to ask it. And then he attacks the reporter and goes on this long diatribe, man. And then the next day it's official, the official announcement. I mean, just say no comment, man, and move on. It's you leaving one school to go to their biggest rival, man. I don't know that we've ever seen that. Not as a head coach, not in the modern era, anyways. Exactly. How do you go from being the head coach at A&M and then go to Texas? his official statement. He's got somebody over there at Texas, and I have not followed this very closely. He's got somebody over there at Texas that he's apparently good friends with, and he wants to go over there and coach with him. But I don't care, man. None of that. That's all noise. How do you look your players in the face as the coach of Texas A&M and tell them you're leaving to go take a job for your biggest rival? I understand all the resources Texas has. Texas A&M's not hurting for resources. I mean, it's kind of an unprecedented situation, man. To me, it's about as low down dirty as you can get. What's next year's bullpen look like? Yeah, that's hard to say at this point. You got to see who's coming back, who's going to be added. I don't. We'll see if Austin Gordon comes back. I know right after the season. I know what Eric Backett said in his press conference about preparing for next season as if Gordon was going to sign, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility he comes back either. Although I probably lean towards him leaving. I think that kid made himself a buttload of money over the back half of the season. He was just so good coming out of the pen as the closer. There's a lot of variables in play when it comes to what's the bullpen going to look like. I don't know what the roster is going to look like just yet, so to be determined. Somebody says, let's talk football. Baseball's over with. Brownell and Backett can foolhardily embrace the portal, and why is Dabo so stubborn? You have to take that up with him, man. He's got a vision for his program, and he's going to run it the way he sees fit, and he's had so much success over the years. He's going to be, he's going to be allowed to do that. And I'm not addressing this at you specifically, but I see so many comments on social media and stuff about how he's going to be in trouble with his bosses like the AD or the president if he doesn't get on board with the portal and stuff. And I just don't know that anything's further than the truth, man. I think all those guys, Dabo, Graham Neff, all the way up to the president, man, I think they're all on the same page with how the football programs run. I also don't think the football program's rolling in NIL money. When you start dabbling in the transfer portal, you got to have the money to pay out. I'm not saying Clemson couldn't afford to go get a player or two. They absolutely could. But when you start having to pay out the bigger deals like that, then you're starting to take away money from the players already on your roster. And I think that those are the kind of problems that he does not want in his locker room. That's part of it anyways. It just doesn't sound to me like Clemson fans are shelling out a whole bunch of money towards NIL at this point. I'm not saying football's broke by any stretch. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think they're rolling into money and can go out and get this guy or this guy, because when you start dabbling in the portal, you got to pay, period. And Dabo's been very reluctant to pay guys just to sign. He's absolutely not going to get into bidding wars. When it's kind of a take it or leave it deal. And when you also start talking about guys in the portal, they won't guaranteed starting spots, and that's how Clemson didn't get a couple that they targeted this year. Those guys wanted to go somewhere they could start, and Dabo didn't have no starting spot to guarantee them. Not that he was going to guarantee them that to begin with. So I don't know that it's him being stubborn. I know a lot of people look at it that way. I think think he's got a vision of how he wants to run his program, how he wants to do things, and that's just the way it is. Another thing people forget or tend, and again, this is not addressed towards you, but another thing people tend to overlook sometimes is Clemson hasn't had a ton of room on the roster to go out and get a bunch of transfers. After the 2022 season, they didn't have any room, none. Last year, they had a couple of spots. And while I was not a big fan of the philosophy they used, let's put it that way, when it came to trying to tap into the portal after last season, because I don't think it's going to bring you a whole lot of success. I kind of look at it this way, they had so much trouble getting offensive linemen to commit and join the 2024 class, so they tried to tap into the portal and kind of supplement the losses that way. And I just don't know that you're going to have a bunch of success doing that, because they were looking for kids with 2-3 years of eligibility left, kids that weren't necessarily going to start in 2024, but that could maybe start 2025 and beyond, kids they could finish developing. And again, kids they're in the portal because they want to go somewhere and play. And none of those offensive linemen that they targeted last year were capable of coming in here and starting in 2024, not in my opinion anyways. I mean, there was one that maybe had the possibility of competing for a spot, but I don't know that any of them are coming in here and starting. But he's got a vision, and he's going to do it the way he wants to do it. It's about the best way I can answer that. The all-in cookout. It is we're in a dead period. There's a week towards the end of the month where the dead period lifts up and things open back up. It's the week of the 23rd. I forget the specific dates, but it's the 23rd through the 29th or something like that. It's that last week in July. So wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong month. 21st through 27th, maybe that last full week in July. I actually talked to a kid on the phone yesterday that told me he was coming back for the cookout on July 25th, but that's a Thursday, so I don't know if that's the exact right date. Probably that last weekend in July, though, 26, 27, 28, and if they do it like they've been doing it last year or two, it'll just be a one day affair. We already know two guys that are coming. The wide receiver that was offered yesterday or day before yesterday, Dillon Alfred, and Logan Anderson, linebacker, today told me he was coming. Which leads us into this. What do I think about the new wide receiver offer? I love Dillon Alfred. He killed it when he came in here to camp, or came and camped at Clemson earlier this month. I mean, he absolutely killed it. I thought he kind of stole the show that morning. That's when I really watched a lot of him, was that morning session. I can't remember if he worked out both sessions. I think he did, but it was the morning session that I really watched a lot of him. Got to talk to his mom a little bit. And, he had already been to Clemson in the spring, and I can't remember if he committed. I think he committed to Ole Miss right after his Clemson visit. He knew that they had a couple of guys that they were already after, and they were going to, wait on things to play out with those guys before they moved on to anybody else. So he jumps on board with Ole Miss, and it's kind of smart. You make sure you got a spot somewhere, and he plays the waiting game. He comes to camp, kills it, and that's the only camp he worked out at this summer. Only summer visit he took, from what he told me. I got to talk to him on the phone for a little bit yesterday. Lost my train of thought there. Phone buzzed. Talked to him on the phone a little bit yesterday, but he's been patient, man, and he's just kind of been waiting on Clemson to make their move. And when they did, obviously Clemson doesn't offer committed kids, so he's got to decommit. He does that. 30 minutes later, he goes public with his offer from Clemson. He's got no other recent offers lately, just the Clemson one. He's got no other summer visits planned, just the Clemson one. You kind of read into that what you will, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're out of this offer. Does not signify that they're out of it with Cortez Mills. For a while, I had long thought that Clemson was only going to take one more receiver in this class. They already got Juju Preston on board. They also got Marquise Henderson, who he's a running back in high school. They took him as an athlete, worked him out at receiver some in camp last summer. So nobody's real sure where he's going to slide in yet. It's not like you got a bunch of receivers running out of eligibility, after this season. So I always just assume they're going to take two. Well, somebody told me at camp, don't be surprised if they don't take two more. And then when I was talking with Alfred yesterday, he absolutely told me, yeah, they're going to take two more. And he said a lot of that has to do with his interest in Clemson. So again, take that how you will. Also told me that he was not in a rush to make another decision, that Clemson was not putting pressure on him to make any kind of speedy decision, but that he did want to have it, probably have one made before the beginning of August. Asked him if it was possible it might happen before the cookout. He just said anything's possible. He didn't know. I don't know if I'd call Kamar Archie a lock to Michigan. He might be Rutgers bound, to be quite honest. I'm not quite sure with him. But if you're talking about the new linebacker offer, Clemson's kind of been looking to add one more a linebacker to the class, just the one. And Archie was kind of that guy for a while. And the Logan Anderson kid came in and worked out at camp, and he killed it, man. I got to talk to his parents for a little bit out there that day, and he ended up coming away with an offer. He's the guy that's going to be here for the cookout. If there's only going to be one linebacker taking this class, I'm starting to look towards that guy. Kamar Archie, he's probably one of the best interviews I've ever done. I think I talked about this on here before, but you can ask him a question and he'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes, man. He's just so personable. He would fit the Clemson culture to a T. Sometimes, when I say that, people kind of miss the fact that just because he fits the Clemson culture doesn't mean he might not fit somebody else's culture too. And, he's got some buddies that are up there at Rutgers or going to Rutgers in the future. And I can see him ending up there. I don't know that he's going to be a lock to Michigan, but don't know that it's going to be Clemson either. So. What about DJ Pickett? I don't even follow DJ Pickett anymore. That's not going to happen with Clemson. I actually have not watched any of his film, but I did watch him work out at camp. He can motor. Logan Anderson can motor, man. Where does Parks fit in the lineup? I assume we talking about Walker Parks. Um, my guess would be right where he was, right there at right guard. That'd be my guess right now. You got a new offensive line coach. Who knows what they might do with some of those guys? But I kind of see it. Blake Miller at right tackle, Tristan Lee at left tackle, Marcus Tate left guard, Walker Parks right guard, and we'll see who wins that job at center. Probably Linthicum will start the season. We'll see if he can hold off the young fella Harris Sewell. Who takes the biggest jump heading into next year baseball? Give me Jaron Purify. I think that kid's got superstar written all over him, man. He is going to be so good, man. He took some lumps this year, but playing as a freshman is going to do nothing but benefit him in the future. I think Nolan Naraki's going to be really good too if he can stay healthy and stay in the lineup. Latest on Davis Sanders. I don't really have anything new to offer up on Sanders. You know, he took his last official visit to Ohio State. I think that was it. He's taken several officials: Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Tennessee. Tennessee and Georgia are the teams I keep hearing mentioned the most with him. Sanders is one of the few guys I've never had a conversation with, and this, one of the few Clemson targets in this class I've never spoken to once. But anybody that's been watching this show the last few weeks, going back a couple months now, especially going back to the beginning of May at least, probably even before that, I have not liked Clemson's chances with Davis Sanders. Just some things I've heard behind the scenes, some things going on in that recruitment just makes me think it's going to head in a different direction. And, again, it's Tennessee's probably gets the most buzz. I wouldn't discount Georgia. Heck, I wouldn't even discount Ohio State at this point, even though I do think he'd prefer to stay as close to home as possible, along with some of the other things he's looking for when it comes that he's factoring into his decision. Are they going to use radios to commute with QB this season? They can. I don't know if that'll have a positive or a negative or any impact on Cade. Garrett Riley's one of those guys that's right down there on the sidelines. He's just gonna signal the plays in himself, even if you're not able to communicate with the quarterback, via headset. And, it's not like he's gonna be sitting there talking in his ear the whole game. It's just those things are gonna be just used to relay plays in and stuff. But it definitely should, at the very least, cut down on some miscommunication stuff. There won't be any reading of the signals wrong or signals getting crossed up, those kind of things. So in that regard, I think it has a positive impact, but much beyond that, it's hard to say. Most of the bigger influential boosters also behind Dabo's strategy. Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know. It's hard to say. There you go, right here. Dillon Alfred will be on campus 6/27/24. That is tomorrow. Is that you telling us he's coming back tomorrow? Because if that, he left that little nugget out when I talked to him yesterday. Yes, Cortez Mills is still in the picture based on everything I can gather. This is not Clemson deciding to offer Dillon Alfred has no impact on Cortez Mills. They would take both in a skinny minute, from my understanding, and I've gotten that from two different sources now. So, doesn't mean that if they miss on one, they're going to immediately go target somebody else and make sure they take two, because I can't say for sure they'll do that. But I do, based on everything I can gather, they would take both those guys right now today. And as far as Mills goes, the longer this thing plays out with him, I think that's best. That's the better it is for Clemson. I can't remember who it was he was in an interview with. I talked to him coming off the official visit weekend, and he raved about the visit, man. He didn't go as far as saying Clemson was his leader like he did a couple of weeks later in a different interview. He told me at that point all the schools were still equal, and but this is the part that stuck out to me. If there was somebody that had separated himself that much, he'd be committed already. That's what he told me after the Clemson official visit weekend. So the fact that he didn't jump on board with Oklahoma right after their visit, he hadn't jumped on board with LSU right after that visit, and he's still not jumped on board with anybody. Right now he's down in Florida at the 5-star challenge, the Rivals 5-star thing, showcase event, or what I think it's the Rivals 5-star challenge. But that's where he's at down there right now. He did tell me last time I talked to him that he was looking to, he was going to sit down and make a decision after his final official visit. At that time, his last one was still set with Miami. As we all know, he canceled that and ended up going to LSU. I do know that Oklahoma made a move with him, big-time move. I just don't know if they did enough to surpass Clemson. I don't know that anybody knows. I've actually tried to get up with Cortez this week. Just like many recruits do, when it's time to make a decision, they kind of stop the communication with reporters. So, it kind of is what it is. You just kind of have to sit and wait. But no, I don't think the ship sailed. Clemson's not moved on from him, and the offer to Alfred is that does not mean that Clemson knows they're not getting Mills. They still take both, and if you could get both, geez, I know some of the recruiting services don't rate Alfred as highly as they do Cortez. I don't know, man. I think Alfred's one of those guys that are kind of undervalued by the recruiting services, at least some of them. I think Rivals has him rated pretty highly, and that's kind of how I see him, man. He just looks like one of those dynamic dudes, man. He can play inside, he can play outside. I mean, he's shifty, he's got that twitch, man, and he can motor too. We're not allowed as reporters, we're not allowed to stay and watch the one-on-ones at camp. But so I didn't get to see that. We don't get to lay eyes on that. Did have somebody tell me that he absolutely was just torching guys in the one-on-ones. And there's a few video clips that are out there on Twitter from his one-on-ones, and they back that up. All right, here we go. July 25th. So maybe that must be the day of the cookout there. Or unless it's going to be that weekend and y'all planning on staying the whole weekend. July 25th is what he told me yesterday, too. Okay, here we go right here. So the cookout's going to be on the 27th, and he's going to get there before the cookout. There you go. Did tell me his whole family was coming. Yeah, I don't have anything new on Hardy Watts either. Just not a whole lot of information coming out about him. There were some predictions made to Michigan for him going into that official visit weekend. I don't know that I've seen but one coming out of that weekend. I haven't really been looking, but I do think I saw that one was put in after the weekend. If I had to guess right now, I've kind of always leaned Michigan with Hardy Watts. They've just got such a great track record of developing guys and putting them into the league, and he's from up north. I don't know. When I see Hardy Watts, I kind of think Big Ten offensive line, and then you add in the fact that their head coach is a former offensive line coach. I would probably lean Michigan with him. Any word on Cade and company with summer practice? If you're talking about, Clemson doesn't have practice during the summer. So if you're talking about them going out west and some of the stuff they've done on their own with Cade working with Jordan Palmer, and I haven't really heard much about that. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, or about 4 weeks. Be time for camp kickoff. ACC kickoffs the last week in July. It'll be here before you know it. Ian Reed. I think Reed's got a lot of upside, but he missed a year basically. He didn't get to practice and stuff last year. He's pretty much out all year. So he's going to be a little bit behind. I don't know. I don't know if he's a guy I would expect to make an impact this year, but he is a guy that I think he's going to end up being a starter on the offensive line for us all said and done. Whether it's a guard or center remains to be seen, but I absolutely think he's capable of that. And I'm assuming that this is Dillon Alfred's mom we've been talking to here tonight. Apologies, because I talked to so many kids that week during camp. I can't remember all the first names. But if this was her, I can tell you she's one of the sweetest ladies I talked to that week. Oh, let's see here. Somebody asked about quarterback, and I'm trying to find it. How are we looking at quarterback? Somebody earlier asked about Tate Reynolds, so we're going to do two birds, one stone here. Tate Reynolds is your quarterback target for 2026. Just, if you follow recruiting, you already know he was committed to Arizona State baseball, has been for a little bit now. Did that before his football stock started to rise the way it has over the spring here. Decommitted from Arizona State yesterday, actually. By rule, he cannot talk to baseball coaches, collegiate baseball coaches, until August. I can't remember the specific date, but it's August. And he told me that was one thing he wanted to do before he made any kind of final decision. Now, I'm not saying that circumstances won't change and something. I'm not saying there's no possibility of him doing something before August, but when I talked to him, that was kind of the way they wanted to go. They wanted to talk to the baseball coaches before they made any kind of final decision. I know that Brady Hart was the guy that went public with his offer first. Based on the conversations I've had, I think Reynolds was actually the kid that was offered first. I think he's the kid that if he told them they could only have one, I think Reynolds is the one Garrett Riley would take. If you look at him, he kind of just fits that mold of some past Garrett Riley quarterbacks. The Duggan kid at TCU, big arm, big arm, but raw. He's very raw, and he flat out told me that in the conversation I had with him. He said I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect of, I'm a lot more raw than a lot of these other quarterbacks are. He said he's never worked with a QB coach yet. I mean, he's only been playing football 2 years. Started as a sophomore out there where he was at last year, I want to say. So the football stuff's kind of new. For a while, it was baseball for him. That was the route he was going to take. And now once all this attention from the football side starts amping up, they're like, oh, we gotta take a step back and think about this. And so I asked him, was he planning to play both at the next level, baseball and football? Because that's difficult to do. But when you're a quarterback, it's almost impossible. Teams can't have their quarterback missing all of spring practice to go play baseball. It's not like it was back, when Kyle Parker was a quarterback. It's a different day. It's a different age. It's a different era. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying it's almost impossible. I don't know how much on board Dabo Swinney would be on. How much Dabo Swinney would be on board with that. Again, you're talking about your quarterback having to miss all the spring practice to go play baseball. So when I asked him if he was planning to play both, and I can't remember if he said he wasn't sure yet, but he ended it with saying that, maybe for the first year, maybe for his freshman year. So he's at least considering the possibility of just playing football only. He's kind of already decided football is going to be the route he's taken, and he's already at least considering just playing football only and no more baseball when he gets to college. I know he did say he'd prefer to play both, at least as his freshman season, but I don't think it's a deal breaker by any stretch. I don't know. He's a guy I feel pretty comfortable with saying I think he's going to end up at Clemson. Is he I'm not saying he's a silent commit, anything like that, because I don't think he is. But I do think he's going to end up being a part of the class, and Clemson will have their 2026 quarterback early, just like they had their 2025 quarterback. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Extremely raw. He's only been playing football for 2 years. He's just fixing to go into his junior year of high school. A lot of developing left to take place with him. Bryce Davis. I think Clemson's probably going to end up on the outside looking in here. They've already got two defensive ends in Watford and Campbell. And if they do indeed miss on Davis, which I think is a distinct possibility, I think it is more than a distinct possibility, to be honest. I think he's probably going to end up in Georgia. But and they've also got Amari Adams, their defensive tackle, committed. I think Clemson's probably going to sit tight with the two defensive ends. I do think they'll try to add one more tackle. Surprise commit that nobody is expecting that could commit to Clemson. I think those days are pretty much over, man, where you just get these commitments that nobody saw coming from way out of left field. There's just so much recruiting coverage now. It's just so hard to keep those kind of things under wraps. I think Tristan Lee was probably the last true surprise, because I had been told that was back when we were still under the Sports Illustrated umbrella, and Sports Illustrated was, they were trying to start a recruiting service. It was called SI All-American, and they had a national guy who was overseeing the whole thing. They had a couple of guys working over there, and I remember touching base with that guy that morning, seeing what intel he had on Tristan Lee, and I can't remember specifically what he told me, but he basically told me it wasn't going to be Clemson. So I had already wrote the story up that, Clemson misses on offensive line target. I can't remember how I worded it, but, and all I had to do was fill in the team when he made the announcement. Then all of a sudden he announces for Clemson, and, a few minutes later, the guy texted me and said, boy, did I get that one wrong. So, I couldn't even venture a guess who could be a surprise commit, because everybody that's got offers. Even when kids commit on the spot these days, it takes 2, 3, 4 days for them to go public. So the offer is going to become news before the commitment does, because they're waiting on a video or they're waiting on a graphic to be made, or the school wants them to hold off for a couple of days. So I just don't know that you're going to get very many surprises like that anymore. Do you see Jeff Scott coming back on staff anytime soon? Probably. Not for this year, probably not for next year. Beyond that, I don't know. Now, I get all the fans wanting Jeff Scott back, come back and coach the wide receivers, and I just don't know when time comes, and he's ready to get back into coaching. That number one, he's going to have tons of options. He's going to have his pick of places when it comes to where he goes. I don't know. Is he going to be willing to come back and just be a wide receiver coach after being a head coach? maybe after Garrett Riley leaves, you get him to come in here and run the offense, but that's something he's never done before. He's never called plays. I know he was co-offensive coordinator at Clemson, but that was kind of really, Tony Elliott did more of the play calling stuff. Jeff Scott did was more on the game planning side and stuff, if what I've been told is correct anyways. Elliott was definitely the play caller. So I don't know. I know he's got a very, very, very bright offensive mind, but I don't know how much experience he's got running an offense solely to himself. I didn't really follow his career at South Florida that closely. I don't know who ran the offense. Maybe he did. I don't know. But my main point is I don't know that he'd be, willing to come back as just a wide receiver coach or a wide receiver coach and recruiting coordinator. Because, again, I think he's going to have his pick of the litter when he gets ready to come back, if he gets ready to come back. Last summer he was out there at camp helping coach the younger wide receivers. I didn't see him out there this year. I know he's doing some stuff with real estate up there around Clemson in that area. I don't know if he I don't know when he's going to decide to get back into coaching. To answer your question, I honestly have no idea. Zay Thomas. I think you can lean towards Florida State with that one. Let's put it that way. If Clemson gets into the Power 2, do they have the money to support the baseball team, or does all revenue stay with football? I'm not really sure what you're asking me here, but Clemson gets to spend their revenue however they choose to spend it. They're going to have to, obviously, they're just going to have a certain amount, 20, 22 million, whatever it is, reserved for paying players. I'm not sure. I don't know that anybody's sure of all the specifics of how that's going to work yet. You're still going to be able to pay players of all sports NIL money. That's not going to change that. But your revenue is going to, by the time you say Clemson, whichever one Clemson gets into, once they become full members, whether that's off the jump or a couple years after they get in and they start getting full shares, their revenue is going to double. I mean, yeah, they're going to be able to support the baseball team. They'll be able to do whatever they want with that money. Yes, I saw Cutter flip from Wake to South Carolina. I was not a big fan of that decision either. It did cause South Carolina's 2026 quarterback commit to decommit, even though the official word is one thing had nothing to do with the other, but the timing's awful suspicious. It's going to be interesting to see where he fits in up there with Lenore's a year in front of him. I'd like to see what Cutter could do at Wake, to be quite honest. How do I feel about Florida State? I am very interested in seeing how DJ Uiagalelei performs in that offense, because I've kind of, I am now a believer in the fact that he just kind of is who he is at this point. We've seen him at two different schools, and he's kind of been the same guy at both schools. I just don't know that there's some magical new ceiling that he's going to hit over there with those guys. There's never been a question about the arm talent, those kind of things. He's got some of that stuff. other stuff that he's lacked in at times. Let's put it that way. So I'm not a big time believer in Florida State this year, most because I'm not a big time believer in DJ as the starting quarterback. We'll see if he can prove me wrong. I think Clemson's out before 2026. That's my opinion. I'm not basing that off anything anybody's told me or anything. I just think they're out by 2026, and I can't tell you where they're going to go yet. If I had to guess, PJ's probably goes in the second round. And Virginia Tech's on my bucket list because I got a bunch of family members that went to Virginia Tech, or I got a few family members that were big Virginia Tech fans, at least one that's an alum over there. And, you know, they've always raved about the atmosphere there at Lane Stadium, and I've always kind of been intrigued by it. I'm a big Metallica fan, so I love the Enter Sandman entrance. It's always been on my bucket list, not just for this year. And with that, I am going to have to bid you farewell. Well, one more thing. DJ technically had a better record at Clemson than Klubnik. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. He wasn't that great of a quarterback. I don't know. You know, I don't care what his record was. It just has nothing to do with Cade, really. You know, DJ had, you know, and Cade's got the same thing, but DJ has DJ had better offensive line play than Cade did last year. It wasn't great offensive line play, don't get me wrong, but it was better than what Cade had last year. Neither one of them's had a healthy wide receiver core. But I don't care what DJ's record was, man. He just wasn't. He has not lived up to expectations, and I just kind of think he is who he is at this point. And I don't know that putting him on a third team is going to make a world of difference. That's kind of where I'm going with that. Appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. Once again, we'll be right back here next Wednesday, 7 p.m. I'll let you know what the future schedule looks like then. We might go back to Mondays the week after that. If it's not that week, it'll be the next. But one or two more Wednesday shows, and we'll be back on Monday nights. Again, I appreciate everybody that follow me over here on Wednesdays. Follow me over here from the last site or the last channel to the new channel. I love chopping it up with you guys on Mondays or Wednesdays here recently, but we'll go back to Mondays soon. I tried to get to all these last questions, man. I got a call I'm scheduled to do at 8 o'clock, so I got to jump off. But again, I want to thank everybody that tuned in. We'll be right back here. Yeah, Wednesday. Next